these workers are treated as human beings.
Anything add on to our cause is we don't like it.
I'm responsible for what I say.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Headlines, the go-to space for the top stories that made the headlines and more. My name is Amalina Kamal.
And I'm Hazwin Hassan. There is a broader discussion about reducing foreign worker dependency across industries. Employers and industry groups emphasize the need for gradual reductions and the importance of upskilling local talent to fill the gap left by foreign workers. The government is exploring mechanisms to achieve this, but it requires collaboration from industries and a shift towards high-tech automation processes.
Separately, the issue of minimum wage in Malaysia is complex and multifaceted, requiring careful consideration of economic, social and policy factors. Now, as the country continues to navigate its minimum wage landscape, we want to also understand how businesses, policymakers, as well as civil society at large can collaborate to strike a balance that promotes inclusive growth, to foster economic resilience, as well as upholding workers' rights and welfare. And last but not least, later in this episode, we will be discussing the fiasco surrounding KK Mart's Allah Socks issue. But first, I would like to introduce our guest that is here on set today. We have, first up, Dr. Carmelo Felito, CEO of the Centre for Market Education. Welcome, Dr.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you. As well as Mr. Chin Chi Siong, SME Association of Malaysia, Secretary General. Welcome, Mr. Chin.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Right. We want to start off the discussion first with our first topic, foreign worker recruitment. Now, we understand that the freezing of this particular, class of workers has caused a lot of industries, to kind of scramble around in terms of navigating the quota. Now, among the industries that are particularly affected is manufacturing, services, as well as plantation. Let's start first with our discussion in understanding, the shortage of nearly 40,000 workers that we have today. The government has introduced the multi-tiered levy system aimed at reducing foreign worker dependency to below 15%. But how can this policy be fine-tuned to minimize adverse effects? Maybe, Mr. Chin, we can start off with you.
Okay, let's look at what the government intention in the first place. Of course, it's great that it tries to reduce the dependence on the foreign workers. But the fact is, it's not so simple as just get away over a couple of years, especially when we are struggling through the pandemic the past couple of years. And most of them, yes, most of SMEs, most of the business, experience a good spike of business once the MCO was lifted. But there is only a very short period. After that, after 1 year, the business are going down, right? Due to many factors. Maybe it's because of economy, maybe cost of living or whatsoever. But also importantly is the lack of workers, right? If you are a lot of SMEs here in services industry, like you mentioned, plantation, agriculture, manufacturing, and most of us require the foreign worker up for those under labor intensive. Not so much on replacing with the automation or robotic that can solve the issue. So by reducing to 15% at whatever pace is it should be a long period kind of planning, right? Maybe today we can discuss a bit more later with your question that there are many other ways that the government can take a look and how the measure can be taken so that our business are not going to be affected, and then it will fulfill our full requirement of having our future manpower planning, as well as how will it constantly help our business to grow without being affected by, especially when they decided and the government decided to stop, they say stop. When they don't open, they open. And the application process is also quite difficult. And a lot of people are slow to get themselves registered and they are left out. So these are the issues that we face. I think it should look at the holistic look at it.
Right.
And then probably we should also consult the industry player like us.
Right. But the Home Minister has been very, assertive when it comes to the deadline for this freezing or for the quota to not be extended, and will be by March 31st. I'm not too sure. Maybe you can give a little bit of insight in terms of how SMEs are, reaching this deadline. How are they navigating through this deadline at the moment? What's the pace?
To put it simple, we have no choice. They already freeze, right? So we can deal with what we have. Then of course there are other excessive of foreign workers who are here, but they are putting into different categories. Those are explosive. There are many, you see the news that there are a lot of foreign workers. There's no job for them when they are here. So you try to recycle these people. But to a certain extent, we do not have a chance to get those workers, right? I'll give you an example. I have a SME member who run a chain of Indian restaurant, and they need a lot of cook and need a lot of workers to work in the kitchen. But right now, he's stuck because he couldn't apply anymore. There's freeze. So where are going to find these workers? Right. The worst is that they will just reduce the number of shop they have, and also reduce number of workers they're going to hire. So that will affect also the local workers indirectly. So I mean, at the moment for us, the abruptly stop of allowing us to get people, it should be by category, by requirement, not by just say you stop, right? And then I believe the government also have data of how many workers is needed for plantation, how many workers working for what you call so-called service industry or manufacturing. So with that, they're trying to set the guideline for application rather than just stop abruptly, and an early person who apply, they got it, and the rest do not have a chance. So you're not balancing the needs. This is where I think government should seriously look into it.
Okay. Carmelo, again, with this, multi-level system that is supposed to take place, in terms of reducing foreign worker dependency to below 15%, realistically below 15%, how are we able to achieve that within the next year or so?
Well, to be honest, I want to contend the fact that we need to reduce dependency on foreign workers. So I think that the target per se is meaningless, in the sense that if we were in a period or in an economy characterized by high unemployment, I could understand the reasoning we should somehow give priority to local workers. But we are an economy that, at least in the past few decades, has never been characterized by heavy unemployment, even at the peak of the lockdown. Now that the economy has normalized, we are at a very structural level of unemployment, around 3%. So we desperately need to feed our businesses with a workforce that comes from somewhere, at the risk that otherwise these businesses kedai tutup saja. Okay? So I don't think that the target of reducing dependence on foreign workers is indeed a good target, first. Second, I think we should avoid to discuss the topic of automation, which is related to this, in an ideological way, like if it was a slogan. We get rid of foreign workers and we replace them with automation. Why is that? And here my colleague knows these things very well. The Malaysian economy is structured with small businesses. 97.4% of Malaysian businesses are small and medium enterprises. Of these 97%, 78% are micro businesses. So automation, if we look at it from a realistic perspective, requires economies of scale. And by definition, micro businesses do not have scale because they are micro. So you cannot, let's say you can introduce a automatic, let's say, coffee roaster machine in a small kedai copy, but they will never use it, okay? Because they don't have the scale of coffee production and consumption that makes sense to invest in machinery. Even if we assume that they had the money for that capital expenditure, they don't have the volumes to make that capital expenditure meaningful. So I contend the fact that the target is a good target in itself. I think that with our level of unemployment and with our structure of capitalism, which is characterized by micro businesses, we should even not discuss this. The eventual meaningful discussion would be how we favor consolidation among businesses so that when we reach scale, we can really look into an economy that produces adoption of innovation, adoption of automation, and eventually produce new innovation. But as far as we don't have the scale, As far as we are dominated by small businesses, we will never be there. And therefore, we will be characterized by labor-intensive businesses and not having labor locally available. And this is a fact. We need to find this labor somewhere else. As simple as that. I would rather go, if you allow me a further step, to a higher degree of liberalization of movement of workers within the ASEAN territory, like it happens in the European Unions, whereby what do we have in Malaysia? In Malaysia, we have eventually an excess of talents, of highly qualified workers that needs to go into underemployment rather than unemployment. But with an open market for labor within the region, we can give access to this talent to more easily look for a job, I don't know, in Indonesia or in the Philippines and somewhere else, while allowing more freely unskilled workers that are needed here to come over and fill that gap. So it's only a higher degree, we need a higher degree of liberalization rather than a lower degree in order not only to get access to the labor that we need, but also to create opportunities, better opportunities that are not available in the country because our country is a small country, to our talents, our highly qualified talents that we have and we have in surplus, and they could look for opportunities as well.
But how do we counter, this move that many economists have already said it's time for Malaysia to revive, to upgrade its industry, to move away from, being to focus on manual labor, particularly in the local workforce? I mean, I do agree. Maybe we should look at the potential of having this open market for foreign for labours within the region itself, but factoring in that we need to also move away from manual labour, how can we find that balance then?
I think that there really the move is to adopt policies that favor consolidation, that try to incentivize business consolidation. Because as far as we remain highly characterized by the presence of micro businesses, then I think automation will just remain a slogan for widely adopted automation. I mean,
Mr. Chin?
I think if you're looking at what you're trying to mention just now, is that how could we move to the next not labor intensive kind of businesses? What sort of business are not labor intensive, for instance, right? Of course, we can talk about manufacturing. That's number one. Malaysia works with manufacturing. So that's why there is a very strong government initiative on TVET, right? This is the first step. So overall, if you look at the whole Malaysia educational structure, right from the day you walk into the schools and then go up to university, how much are they planning to build the technology personnel or even TVET personnel to plan for the numbers? We don't have now. We don't have enough numbers. In fact, there are so many foreign investors that came in. They say, where could I find the workers? If I couldn't find the workers, even high tech or high skill industry, they don't have enough workers. So what they can do? They move away. They move to Indonesia. They move to Vietnam, who is much better pool of technology workers that we do not have. So it's not that we have the people right now. We do not have. Right? You just look at our education system. How many students going to the science stream eventually coming up? You do not have enough science students, right? And we do not even have enough TVET students to fulfill the next phase of changes if you want to change so fast. We need times. We need times to convert ourselves from a labor incentive towards a high, what they call technology-based, less labor incentive kind of industry. So what we can do right now is go back into our education system, look at what we can offer, look at what are the plans that we move forward to develop such a personnel in the longer run. In Singapore, they already have Ngee university that right from day one, that teaching them running on TVET, right? You don't have to be a graduate for that matter. Even they pay well. So the salary is secondary. The importantly is we must get students to get interested in going towards this course. So that got to build from young.
You mean prioritize on skills first before implementing?
Prioritize your skill right from the early education.
But I'd just like to go back to Carmelo's argument just now on you've got the local talent who are overqualified for most of the jobs that we see now in the market. And my question is, a lot of the foreign workers coming in are also quite overqualified for the kind of, let's say, menial jobs that they do in the labor sector. So what's preventing the local graduates, local talents, from doing the sort of work that the foreign workers are doing? Perhaps maybe putting in more effort into securing the jobs that they think would be better for them. Because if this wasn't happening, then we wouldn't have the issue with not enough workers in the first place.
Well, I think that is a matter of a different level of hunger, if you allow me the expression. So Malaysia is a blessed country, low unemployment, abundance of resources.
Right.
So many, not all, but many young people have a choice, have the possibility to wait and to look eventually for a better job, for looking for something that fulfill more their expectations. Their young colleagues from Bangladesh are probably less fortunate than them, or the colleagues from the Philippines, from certain classes in Bangladesh or in the Philippines. So they come from a situation with a higher degree of dissatisfaction for their conditions in their country. So with the money that they can make here with a low-skilled job, they are happy because that money come in first and can help their families back home, which is a need that, thanks God, most of young Malaysians don't have. They are in a more privileged position from a positive, I mean privilege in a positive sense here. So this different level of background, I think, makes the real difference.
So if we remove the privilege, do you think that we would be able to fill in the gap here?
I'm not talking about privilege in a negative sense. I'm privileged in the sense that the economy has been developed, so that Malaysia is at a level of development that countries like Bangladesh or the Philippines or Vietnam are not. So these give access to options and choices to the young Malaysians that other young people don't have around the world. So we should not remove that. So we should, I mean, if Malaysia achieved the level at which young people don't need to go into that jobs, chapeau to Malaysia, is an achievement for Malaysia. I think the fact that we are reliant on foreign workers is a positive fact, because it means that there are better opportunities for the younger Malaysian rather than going into the 3D jobs. And this is a positive thing, it's not a negative thing. So we are treating negatively something that in itself is positive, because the young Malaysians have better options than going harvesting coconut. And so that jobs need someone else that has been less fortunate in life and would be very happy to come here and do that. And we need to protect those workers and grant them human conditions so they are not exploited, they don't become modern slaves. That, yes, I agree. But the fact that we need foreigners to fill that job is actually a positive fact. It means that Malaysia is at a different level of development.
Yeah. I mean, would you agree that a lot of the problems that we have with foreign workers is actually from the recruitment process? And we, on this show we've discussed that a lot. We've tied it to the immigration policies that we've seen put in place.
The agents.
And rogue recruiters who are really marring the industry, unfortunately. So do you think if that gets addressed and sorted out?
I think that would be a good point to, again, as I mentioned earlier, to be sure, to monitor, to try to enforce that these workers are treated as human beings, from the recruitment process up to the conditions in which they have to work, that they have one or 2 days of rest in a week, that they don't become modern slaves. So that is where I see the role of government in terms of enforcement, granting human dignity for these individuals that come here often out of desperation. They see an oasis of heaven in Malaysia. I traveled often to Bangladesh, in example, during my business experience, really many times. And it happened to me to meet, in example, the taxi driver from a hotel. Say, where are you, sir? Say, I'm from Malaysia. Say, aku orang Itali tapi sudah lama di sini, orang Malaysia. I'm from Malaysia. And I say, sir, can you find for me a job in Malaysia? And I was telling him, you know, you are here doing a clean job, driving a nice car for foreign guests here, driving a Mercedes with a nice suit and talking with guests. You know, if you go to Malaysia, the conditions of work for you will probably not be so pleasant, at least in physical terms. Monetary speaking is a different conversation, but in terms of physical quality of the work will be very different. But they hear the word Malaysia, they already have an heaven in mind. Okay, so that is, we have to be sure that eventually they come here and they are respected as human beings, because they come here often with a dream in mind, a dream that for our local young Malaysians has been already upgraded. They dream about multinational companies, about C-suites, about being entrepreneurs, about funding startups. So they have different ambitions, and this is a positive point for Malaysia. To grant that ambitions to our youth is a good point.
So the 15%, that's just an arbitrary number, you think?
Yes, I mean, I think that we need foreign workers at this level of unemployment and this structure of capitalism. We should not put any limit at all.
Okay. Because we have to wrap up the first segment of the show at least. I just want to maybe compress the two questions here and direct it to Mr. Chen. So in terms of, you know, the role that public and private partnerships can play in facilitating adoption of advanced technologies, what sort of measures must be put into place to enhance productivity as well, to maintain the level of productivity that we already have? And another part of it, because the decision by the government is that March 31st is the deadline. If in the future the government is looking at to assist SMEs, what sort of incentive or subsidies should they be looking at? I mean, targeted, of course.
I think there are many ways the government can help. And you're talking about a private partnership program. Of course, to get government to get directly involved is a bit difficult because of their mechanism, their operation. They're always very slow. Even they approve 30,000 of the additional plantation worker, it takes months to come out and allow people to apply. So what they can do is get the GLC, the big plantation company that related to the government, they can work with the private sector, especially the SMEs, right? To look into what they need and work together. If they're in plantation, let's work on plantation. If they're in manufacturing, let's work on manufacturing. How to go hand in hand? Because for SME, first of cases, when you want to grow, we always have an issue of capital to go into automation or go into robotics or whatsoever. We want to do that, of course. But not only technology that hinders us, not only people that hinder us, the capital is more important. But if you get a partnership from probably GLC, they can work together. Eventually, when it grows to a certain stage, SME can buy back. You know what I mean? You come in and assist together, and whatever expenses, we go together, right? Even for that, GLC also can build another what you call stream of knowledge in each sector, and you classify each sector. You go to logistics, for instance, right? Or warehouse. What can they do to reduce, labor costs in the warehouse? There are many ways. There are robots. You go to see in China, for instance, you look at the huge warehouse by hectares, and they are zero labor. It's all by robots. But to do that, you need a lot of money, a lot of capital, right? So what I'm trying to say is that private partnerships is important, and then the hand-holding is important. They put out capital. We work on our skill. We know what we want to increase our productivity. We can find whatever automation, not in the country, outside country, we can get that in. But the issue is, after we do that, how do we grow? Right? We be part of the supply chain to the GLC, for instance. There you grow together, right? And more importantly is they must do in all SMEs, not particularly only in certain area, right? You could, for instance, a lot of SME concentrate in Klang Valley, but for those SME in rural area, how are you going to help them? Are you willing to handhold them? Right, that's number one. Number two, talking about, reducing the workforce and putting more effort into getting automation or whatsoever, government should also provide incentive. For instance, if I can hire 80% local worker, in whatever industry, 20% foreign worker, then you give me some incentive. Right. So whatever incentive we can work out, whether wage subsidy or you're talking about a special rate for our loan assessment or whatsoever, then you will encourage, and however it is, look for local workers, right? So this is a thing that we think government can do. And besides that, I understand that there are a lot of grants coming up from government. I mean, this month alone, there is another grant, the business accelerator program from SME Corp. That kind of grant will help to a certain extent. How the SME group, but the amount they given was very small, and the window application is very short. Within 3 weeks or 2 weeks, you must submit all the requirement. And for those people who may not know about this, then will left out.
Accessibility is still one issue,
Yeah,
and then that grant can only entertain or at least accommodate a few segment of the businesses at large lah. As I understand. One last question on this particular segment, in terms of striking the balance between reducing foreign worker dependency as well as maintaining its competitiveness in the global market, are there any sectors where this transition may be particularly challenging?
I think mainly is towards the manufacturing side lah. But to SMEs, we only export about 13%. So overall, it doesn't affect us so much. It's more on the domestic service industry, the logistic industry, or those not so much of a huge labor incentive. SME, in manufacturing below 200, we are no more SMEs, in terms of workers, number of workers. So it don't really matter so much for us in terms of balancing it, but for the mid-sized SME, that will be affected very much. Due to the fact that not only the labor cost you're going to consider, now the electricity is getting higher, right? The cost of salary is getting higher, right? I think we're going to talk about minimum wages as well. And if you're going to increase wages again, then you put a big wham on the employers. Right. So they will definitely have a lot of issue, and that will strike our competitiveness compared to other country. Will be less. If I get costing more, how are we going to compete? Right. It's not so easy to balance that. So we hope that government can understand that and go smoothly on the restriction.
Right.
Yeah, I think
we can transition into the minimum wage since you've mentioned it as well.
Thank you for segueing into the second I do my job.
Nice.
That's fine.
They all affect us, right?
So yes, moving on now to the minimum wage discussion and the potential impact that it would have across the industries in this country. So the government announced plans to review the minimum wage this year, a move that's generated considerable buzz among employers, employees, and economists alike. In his recent address to the Dewan Raya, the Parliament, Human Resources Minister Stephen Sim reiterated the government's commitment to conducting a thorough review, ensuring that all perspectives are taken into account. So, here's what we know so far. The review, slated to take place under the National Wages Consultative Council Act 2011, aims to incorporate feedback from various stakeholders, including both employers and employees. Additionally, socio-economic reports, such as those from Bank Negara, will inform the decision-making process. The announcement comes on the heels of calls from various quarters, including the MTUC, or the Malaysian Trades Union Congress, urging the government to re-evaluate the minimum wage rate, particularly in light of recent economic changes, such as the Sales and Services Tax SST.
Yeah,
hike.
and it's also worth noting that, the last review of the minimum wage occurred back in May 2022, which saw an increase from 1,200 ringgit to 1,500 ringgit. However, with inflationary pressures as well as rising costs of production looming, the need for a comprehensive review becomes all the more pressing. Now, business leaders such as Tan Sri Sohtian Lai, President of the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, FMM, stressed the importance of a holistic approach in the review process. Now, they emphasized the need for a proper engagement with stakeholders to understand prevailing business sentiments and the potential impact on overall production costs. I just want to start the discussion by asking Carmelo, how might adjusting the minimum wage impact different sectors here? What are the potential trade-offs involved?
Well, I think that we should start thinking on how many people are actually affected or how many people are really involved with a salary which is close to the minimum wage. Okay, because I think we are making this discussion bigger than what is in the facts. So if we look at the data from DOSM, which are aggregated by household, and we look at how many households in Malaysia are earning less than 2,000 ringgit a month, which is more or less the sum up of 2 minimum wages, we get 4.9% only.
Okay.
While the two biggest categories are, if I'm not mistaken, I have here the numbers, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So we are sure I tell you the biggest. So less than 2,000 is 4.9%. Then the biggest category is 11.7% is household earning between 3,000 and 4,000. Followed in third position, 11.5%. Those households earning more than 15 Lima Plus thousand ringgit a month.
Ni combined income, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
household
okay.
combined.
Combined, yeah.
So, unfortunately, we don't have it by individuals. Or at least I was unable to find the data
Right.
by individual.
Right.
But this gives us a scale, give us the idea that probably we are over-emphasizing the issue. So the people that are actually affected by minimum wage or people that are earning the minimum wage, at least for the Malaysian workforce, are very limited.
Yeah,
Number
that's
one,
less than
and probably
5%.
something affecting more foreign workers rather than local workers. And then I would be pleased if the discussion would be moved away from minimum wage per se and go into the consideration of social mobility. Because I think the real problem is not starting low. You may, I mean, you know, the labor market becomes more competitive. We may have entry conditions in the labor market that are at low level.
Right.
But the real issue is not starting at the low level. Is if I enter with a low salary, am I stuck at that salary, or there are growth opportunities, there is social mobility. So I think this is the real question, which is also related to what we have discussed before in terms of the presence of micro businesses. Micro businesses are those businesses that by nature offers less opportunities for social mobility, because it's difficult to have a career in a company made of 3 people. So either you take over the business or you remain in the same position. So again, my point goes to the same it was before. The real conversation is how do we favor consolidation among businesses so that scaling up allows for the creation of not only automation opportunities, but also better social mobility opportunities.
Career progression.
So a real progression that is given by the fact that people grow also in the things that they do in a certain business. If you work in a family restaurant made of 3-4 people, either you are a waiter or you are a cook, and you stay there forever unless you change job. You don't become head chef, no, because that are the possibilities. Or you don't become head of a crew. So this is the real, I think, the real issue. And focusing only on minimum wage, I think, keeps us out of target. With the fact that the way minimum wage usually increases in minimum wage go to penalize unskilled workers, because they are those that are more easily replaceable by technology. And we have seen this also during the lockdown with little robots appearing in small restaurants and etc. So again, like I said before, I think that somehow the conversation has been placed in the wrong focus.
Perhaps, can you just say for certain, are you against government intervention when it comes to minimum wage?
In general, yes.
or at least the progressive
Yeah.
wage framework.
Because it seems from
okay,
your
okay.
explanation, it seems to be
Progressive
hindering.
wage is a different thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
of course.
and what we are still waiting, I think, to have a clear explanation
Of
about
the
the mechanism
framework,
or the
yeah.
framework about progressive wages. So I would not express a judgment
Right.
as far as the mechanism is not clear, because so now we have only a word, progressive wage, something linking to productivity, but then how do you measure
Right,
productivity? Because you go for a class, then you become more productive. You know, if you know how life in a business is not that because you go to a certain course, then you become more productive necessarily.
Right.
You can have even an inflation of courses and then spending more time doing upskilling than actual work, so you become less productive. So this is a separate discussion. But minimum wage, again, first of all, is affecting a very minimal portion of workers in Malaysia. Secondly, I think is not really going to benefit any worker, because what is really benefit workers is social mobility, growth opportunities, not really the starting point.
Right.
Okay.
I understand, yeah.
But I mean, I understand. But the essence of productivity being measured to kind of like equate to how much you should be earning, unfortunately, this is what's played up, especially by employers. Even at the start of a person's career profession, I would say, they look at skills and they look at the probability of how much they can produce as how much they're supposed to earn. At least from the SME side, how do you navigate this consideration when employing your members of the workforce?
You see, for SMEs, anything add onto our cost is, we don't like it, put it that way. Not that it causes our cost of production higher, but also we will definitely put price back to the consumer, the end user. But I mean, in this case, talking about minimum wage, I understand what the government trying to do. They're saying that you have to raise the bar because cost of living is getting higher.
Right.
We have been, you have not been having good minimum wages or salary from 20 years ago until now. It still remain almost the same to many kind of jobs. But the question, like I say again, productivity. If you are better, to be frank, most of restaurant owner, they hire any person. None of them pay below 1,600. Now they pay below 2,000 for that matter. In fact, they get more, right? Even you fix now 1,500 for that matter, right? But most of the time we give them housing, you give them logistic, you give them food.
Right.
They are not included. The overtime is not included. So you are actually paying more, right? So how the minimum wages mean? In which category, which bracket? Take home or basic? They are talking about basic right now. Right? Basic doesn't make sense. You try and hire somebody in KL to get 1,600. It's so difficult. Nobody will want to apply.
To take the job, yeah.
Right? They want to take the job. So it doesn't make sense. But for a person, probably in Terengganu, a small place, when you have a small manufacturing plant or whatsoever production, you probably can get that kind of salary. Because their house probably walking distance, they go to work, and they provide them food, everything, 1,500, good enough. For them to live. KL, tak boleh. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not against the minimum wages policy, but it got to take into consideration on which sector where. Whether you're in rural area, you're in KL or whatsoever. Right? And then that will definitely help. And there against productivity, your performance, we definitely will increase. There's no way. But the problem with increase of minimum wages, let's say now from 1,500 they move to 1,800. That'll be a big issue for all the SMEs. The last 2 years they leave a thing. I know one, a few, not one, those furniture manufacturer in Patapahat. Wow. Overnight, their basic cost increased by 2 million. 1 year because of the increase of wages, because there are many workers. So, but a lot of workers are labor workers. They're foreign workers. The amount you given to them, they will send back to their own country. Ringgit start coming down. I mean, compared to US dollar, become worse for us. So these are the things that we worry. Not only increase our costs, now competition is getting great especially on the furniture industry. They are crying, right? They are crying. And at the moment, there are more issues because of Israeli issue, because there's many, big manufacturers distributed in US are all Israelis. They buy from Malaysia, for instance, because many years they've been doing that. Now suddenly you got this restriction.
Yeah.
Then where are they going to sell?
Right.
Then they got to release their workers, and then it's going to be a big problem for us as well, especially on the earning of export. In manufacturing, we are one of the top exporter of manufacture of furniture in the world. Right? Those are part of it only. But these are the issues that we face.
Right.
Based on both of your explanation, I can see how this is going to backfire, this policy. It's well intended. It's meant well, but I think number one, what I can see is it will reduce the competitiveness in the job market,
For
because I feel like if it were left to the employers and we were to let the markets be more liberal and let the markets play it out, that would naturally just sort things out, wouldn't it? Like you said, they are already being paid a lot already. There's
more than that.
They're not being most of the service industries, those sort of jobs, they're being paid more than 2,000 ringgit a month, and that's not with all the other added benefits that they get.
Right.
So, is it a good idea to carry on with this? From what I think I've seen so far, I don't think it is.
is a discussion which is a lot political, rather than really economical. Because as I mentioned, indeed the percentage of people in the whole country really affected by this is minimal. So it's more like of a political conversation, which has a very little impact on Malaysian workers. And indeed, I've seen even advertisement for jobs in restaurants at 3,000 recently near my house in Secret Recipe. They were advertising outside of the shop and hiring for people there in the restaurant for 3,000 plus. So if I'm not mistaken, so we are already much beyond that. So we are doing interviews and commentaries on things that are probably not really a news.
That's true. Yeah, exactly.
I mentioned most of them are foreign workers. They pay low.
Foreign workers.
You
And
increase,
then-
they take back.
Right. But there has been a report that says foreign workers are already earning the minimum wage anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Of course, they are, but there are some also they're trying to
Try.
play with the 19 line.
I mean, I suppose this is a way to kind of like standardize the practice, because we don't know what grey areas or certain industries or certain markets that are still paying people below it. So this
Or perhaps rather, I think the issue must be there should be more focus on talking about human rights and basic rights
Basic,
afforded
yes.
to these foreign workers.
Yeah.
More so than it is being about a minimum wage policy being set and
About
government
dignity.
intervention required.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, more policy for make sure the employers take care of their employees.
Right.
Workplace safety, and other facilities. You want to
Occupational
encourage
safety
people to
hazard
work.
concerns, yes.
You encourage women to go to work. You have to provide what you call a child center for that matter to help them. Those are
Right.
things they should look at.
Well, that's about it for this second segment. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this discussion. I'd like to once again thank our guest, Dr. Carmelo Ferlito, the CEO of the Centre for the Market Education, and Mr. Chin Chi Siong, the SME Association of Malaysia Secretary General. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on the show Beyond the Headlines. We would love to have you back on sometime soon. So, folks, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We have our third and final discussion coming up after this.
Welcome back, everyone, to our last segment of this week's episode, where we will look at the recent controversy surrounding the sale of socks bearing the word Allah. Now, Muslims across Malaysia are outraged, but is it across the board? Now, the actions of KK Supermart and Superstore Sdn Bhd have sparked anger and demands for accountability. The sacredness of this word to Muslims cannot be overstated, yet it was carelessly printed on socks and sold by a Malaysian convenience chain. Now, in the wake of this controversy, the factory involved has suspended operations due to security concerns. Now, this move comes after pressure and demands for accountability soared high, especially on the internet. While investigations continue, it's essential for all parties to cooperate and ensure the safety of workers.
His Majesty the King of Malaysia Sultan Ibrahim and His Royal Highness Tunku Ismail Sultan Ibrahim have called for a full investigation and strict action against those responsible. Sultan Ibrahim rightly emphasized that such disrespect towards Islam should never have occurred, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. Meanwhile, Religious Affairs Minister Datuk Dr. Muhammad Naim Mokhtar has highlighted the importance of interfaith understanding. Agencies like JAKIM and YADIM will engage with non-Muslim communities to explain the significance of the word Allah to Muslims. It's crucial for everyone to respect and understand each other's beliefs to foster unity in our diverse society. So just for this, we have here in studio our guest, a socio-political expert from UCSI, University College Sedaya International, Professor Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin Muhammad Rasti. He has authored and published 56 books to date on architecture, social politics, religion, and education. He was also appointed as a member of the Majlis Perundingan Keamanan Rakyat, or MPKR, in 2019. Professor, welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
to
you
have
for
you
being
here. Now, so this all actually boils down to education, right? So how can we get the education curricula to be redesigned to incorporate lessons on diversity, inclusivity, and empathy from an early age? Isn't it high time already that we do it?
Well, I think this issue about raising education among children is something that has been said quite a lot. What hasn't been said is education among politicians. Now that is also something which I think needs a bit of a reminder, as well as a bit of an advising in terms of making statements like asking for boycotts and hating others in the social media, in the digital world. With respect to education for the children, we have been doing what I call industry-based education, meaning we are very focused on making our children have a living in terms of getting a salary or having a training in terms of some sort of a practice. But we do not really care much about whether they have friends of other religion, whether they have friends of other race, and that becomes a problem in itself.
But okay, in the case of KK Supermart and the printing of Allah, the word Allah on the socks here, is it not about caveat vendita though? You know, where sellers must know what they are selling, especially an item as offensive as the sock. For instance, I'm just highlighting here our letter that we published as well. That if cruel disregard for the faith of others is paid with mere apologies, especially in matters such as offensive to a certain community, there is no guarantee that it will never happen again. Not just to the Muslim population, but to other faiths that we are observing here in Malaysia. You know.
Yes, I think the idea here about once I had explained in one of my YouTube about something that happened to me personally when I was in a supermarket in Taiping one time, about 15 years ago, I think. I saw a T-shirt that said something, and one of the words was I won't repeat it here. It's something about the male organ, you know, but in American slang. Mm-hmm. So I asked the sales girls whether you know what they say, and they didn't know how to read English. They're just selling, and I said, "Get your supervisor." So the supervisor came. I said, "Do you know what this says?" He says, "Yes," and he said it. "Do you know what it means?" "Why? What does it bother you?" And when I explained, he immediately took it down. And this is something which I say that, well, if you want to refer to the idea of whether something is appropriate or not, you really need to have a sales supervisor that is really aware of what is being said, on T-shirts and things like that. So that is on the part of the manufacturer, I guess, or on the part of the supermarket owner. But here, in this case, I understand that it came from somewhere else, that this was imported somewhere. So if it was imported, you are right, that they need to have someone who scrutinize what exactly the T-shirt is saying or the sock is saying, and definitely blame can be made onto the seller. But here, it is also from the importing the manufacturer. Somebody asks, how come it goes through the immigration or the, where's the check and balance there? I once brought in some Bibles from the United States when I came back home, because I love to read about other religion, and they were confiscated from me by the immigration officer, and they said, why? Or this, you have no authority to bring in Bibles. I said, I just use this for my understanding and also reading, because I teach architecture, and part of it is about church architecture, and I need to understand what goes on in a church as well as having to explain the building. So what happened to the check through the product?
This whole sensitivity, we're built that way, right? But in this particular context, okay, KK Mart is just one of many. Previously, we had certain quarters of the opposition bloc actually also highlighting that canteen schools should not be in operation, and non-Muslims should eat somewhere else. And then we've got our education minister addressing that by not using, or at least weaponizing, religion to this extent. And before that, one of the national heritage dishes, the bakute was identified as a national heritage, but we have a lot of groups marring that labeling. So KK Mart is not necessarily just one, but what sort of depiction are we giving, and how can we grow from that?
Well, first of all, most of those people who are against this idea of opening canteens during Ramadan, or against the idea of bakute being made a heritage food, and also getting angry at a single mistake done by somebody in terms of quote-unquote insulting Islam. I don't know where they learn religion from, whether they learn it from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, or they learn it from somebody else. And the Prophet Muhammad had forgiven Abu Sufyan, who was actually planning to assassinate him before he left for Medina. And he also forgave Hindun, who desecrated the body of Hamza. And he also forgave Wahshi, who was the one hired to assassinate Hamza. The breadth of the Prophet's tolerance is well documented. What is happening with the Friday sermon in not saying that forgiveness, understanding, tolerance is the pinnacle of Islam. But what is being kept quiet is when somebody says, look, you're doing this, and therefore we must, boycott, or we must, there was the word burning being used by one of the politicians. And none of the muftis or religious so-called teachers said anything about it. And of course I said something, but then who am I? I mean, nobody's going to respect Professor Tajuddin. But where are those who are supposed to be respected? Those who are professors of Islam, for instance. Why didn't they say something? About
at least
about
mediate the
Yes.
sort of like call to aggression here.
That's right. There even research centers in universities is supposed to be about ethnic understanding. They didn't come out and say, well, we need to have this because in a formula we need to have an understanding. Now, in the olden days, what would have happened if somebody found this talking is that they would report it somewhere, and then the Jabatan Agama would come and investigate. They would investigate, then the newspaper would put up something. But here in the social media, something just goes out a little bit, and then it just spreads like wildfire. So we are in a different world, worse than the pandemic and worse than a nuclear threat. It's called the social media.
Could it be that perhaps some are seeing it because it is such, we have to admit that it is quite a really sensitive issue to the majority of Muslims. I don't think it's isolated to just Malaysians. I think, if you go across majority Muslim nations, this would incur the wrath of a lot of Muslims, whether they're Malaysian or not. But is it because maybe that some people seem to trivialize the fact that this has happened, which could have triggered more of that response, the more aggressive response that we've seen, especially from politicians. And politicians, they're probably going to it's no surprise they're going to use this and play it up to their for
Yes.
their gain. So what do you think?
Well, I think the basic thing is that we have forgotten the meaning of the word adab, meaning decorum, meaning the idea of using words, the idea of getting the whole picture. For instance, there is something that happens. Well, let's listen to the whole picture first, and then let's ask those who are the ones who are stakeholders and things like that. So these things did not occur. You know, the thing that occurred. Look, there was an incident where there was this worker who was doing something, and then somebody made a video or a social media comment, and he lost his job. But it turned out he was doing what the employer was saying, and there was nothing about that. Okay, so if you were to ask me real education, but also enforcement, and I'm trying to say that I think we actually need laws to govern this social media, as well as statements by anybody using certain words like boycott, even though somebody will say, well, this is freedom of speech. Come on, freedom of speech without responsibility, without wisdom, without conscience. If you cannot learn what those things mean, then something else must happen. I mean, Singapore is very successful because they said certain iron hand was made by the administrators. They say, oh, Singapore, you have to look everywhere. Somebody's. I don't know whether that was good at that time, but I think presently we actually need a kind of a big brother idea about how we handle the social media, because it's getting out of hand. Okay, I'm not anti. I use social media. I mean, I have a YouTube and things like that, but I'm responsible for what I say. But others, the young people, they don't understand what responsibility is. They understand the number of viewers, the number of clicks, the number of popularity. They do not understand at all the impact on other things when they start, airing anything and everything. And also, never mind the words that they use to comment. I mean, I get comments and sometimes I say, look, if you say something like this, you are bordering on fitna. Then you would be, something like that. It's a sin, and this is something which is not being talked about. They're still repeating about alcohol, about men and women, about concert, but they're not talking about such things, about how you relate to one another, how do you respect another. That is one of the anchors of spirituality, is how you treat others. I always say that if you want people to respect you, you have to respect the people first. Okay, once upon a time, once the Prophet Muhammad said to the Muslim who was saying bad things against those non-Muslim who died in the battle, he said, stop saying bad things about them. And they asked why? Because these people have families. If you say bad things, then their families will get angry. Then they will, have some not having to have the trust or the faith in you in that sense. So it was a very simple rule. Do unto others as you would do, that sort of things. So this is something which we need to have in our education, and I think across the board, whether it is for children and also for those people in parliament. These are something which we have left behind in our education system.
You're talking about pendidikan moral here lah, in terms of how to conduct yourself, especially in crisis situations such as this. How to be more forgiving, how to be more accepting, how to also take accountability in areas where you need to be accountable for. So in a way, I'm trying to summarize what you mentioned. The accountability on KK Mart's side is commended, but also the accountability on whoever the leaders, the politicians looking at the matter and not taking advantage of the matter is also important as well.
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. First of all, the idea of moral education is seen as unimportant. We have moral education. If you read the Ihya Ulumuddin by Imam Ghazali, nobody reads Bimbingan Mukminin, you can see in his 25 Bencana Lisan, all the things about how words can affect your place in hell or in heaven, whether you've been praying or not and things like that. But these are the akhlaq that is being taught, and that akhlaq is being seen as a very small mark. In university education, people talk about AI, people talk about digital, people talk about all this technological advancement. I say in the future, we need to learn to respect each other. We need to learn to accept others' opinions and way of life in order to become a global civilization. Because the digital technology has opened these doors that nobody had ever thought of. And so if we do not emphasize how we relate to one another, then we are weaponizing the social media as well as the technology into something that will totally destroy us. How would it be that you can't even know how to assess a simple information? I have on YouTube how to assess information. Number 1, get the whole story. Number 2, get some verification. Number 3, look at the source. If the source is a politician leader who's trying to be famous, then don't really believe him lah. There are ways to actually learn this, but this is not taught. And this is something which I think must be given serious consideration by educationists at this time.
Okay. It looks like it's more of a politician problem than it is really a societal issue.
Yeah. Yes, because number 1, the rule about being a politician in Malaysia, if you're a Malay politician, is very easy. If you want to be very successful, quote unquote successful in this world, is that you want to make yourself popular, and the best way to make yourself popular is to play on identity politics, meaning race, religion, and just make it so that people get angry. It as I said, this is political opportunism, and we have gotten used to it already. But the point here is that when you add the dimension, number 1, boycott, then it destroys life economically. Number 2, when you add religion, then you may threaten lives because there will be vigilantism. We have the burning of one of the politicians' house. Until today, the police have not given any report to us about the suspect that they had apprehended. What is the race of that suspect and why he did it? They didn't say that. And because they didn't say that, I think it's so sensitive to the point that, the idea that having to threaten by burning or even by...
But would it make any difference though? I mean, isn't the police just also trying to be fair to kind of like maintain the kemakmuran and, people's peace here? Yes,
because the police have their own prerogative whether they want to tell us what's happening in the background. Because if it threatens the harmony of the society, then they would probably not do so, But the point here is that I learned to read what is being said, what is not being said, what is being acted, and what is not being acted. This is how I read things. Okay, so when something is not being said, then I think there is something there. If he was, let's say, an along, who was burning that politician house, maybe he owed money, I think they would probably have said it, okay? Because then it's nothing to do with race or religion. But because they kept quiet, that says something to me.
Right. I want to, because we have to like wrap up in the next 5 minutes actually, but I want to just go back into this whole nation building unity topic, right? I mean, also how to kind of like incorporate the fiasco surrounding KK Mart's Allah Socks issue here. Now, KK Mart has actually also pledged to review and update its standard operating procedure, and recently it has also closed down its factory in helping to package the socks before distributing it to the shops. But another part that's still missing is, how do we move on from here? I think Muslims at large, or at least any society that's looking at this, like how can we become better Malaysians? How can we be above like oversights such as this? When I say be above oversights such as this, it's not to kind of like completely disregard what had happened, but this is actually a chance for us to understand one another better, right? You should actually be looking at how you're going to engage with a non-Muslim to talk about it, echoing what our religious affairs minister is saying.
Yeah, that was when I was appointed the Majlis Perundingan Keharmonian Rakyat. under the PH government in 2019, I had suggested to the group, and I think basically the group had agreed. I said that this group of 14 or 15 Ahli Majlis would now do more than just advise the minister. We should mitigate the situation, like say this stalking thing. We would be the first, because the Majlis, Ahli Majlis consists of all races or religion. So I said that if anything like this happen, don't let people like politicians make noise. We would be the one that would say something first. We won't be pronouncing judgment or anything, but we would, number one, explain things. Number two, we would get the certain people to meet together and things like that. And so that would be a buffer to the, because if you have something like this happen, a minister would say, and then they say, oh, it's because he's from this party, that's why he says that. So this is already getting a kind of a pandemic of sickness among our society, where you are related as to a race, to a particular party, or a religion to a political party, and this is not very, very healthy. So I think we need that kind of, if it is a real issue, that of misunderstanding, okay, then it would have been solved very easily. But here it has been made into a political opportunity by one particular politician. And this is where I said, if you were to ask me education, if you were to ask me enforcement, I would say to the politician. Secondly, I would say to the social media. We need a stronger rule about having an AI to track down, words like boycott, words like jom kita, attack this thing or things like that. You need to do that, because apparently we don't know how to use the advancement of technology that we have in our hand.
Right. Last questions?
Well, I think, there's a lot of lessons that we can draw from this, and one in particular is obviously, like you said, the people like you who serve, or when you did serve, you served the board for preserving harmony, among the races. It would serve as a buffer rather than having to hear inflammatory, remarks and comments from politicians who most of the time have more up their sleeves, really. And that comes as no surprise. So the other thing, I think, other than trying to monitor or trying to police this, social media, which I think that's can be a whole discussion on its own, shouldn't there be more than that? I think policing most of the time doesn't quite solve things. In fact, I think a lot of people tend to act out against it. So what do you think is better, actually, rather than policing?
Well, the answer is very obvious to me, and I've been saying it for a long time. The university buat apa? This is the problem. We have so many universities, so many professors. You know how many professors there are in Malaysia? So they should be saying something. What are they doing not saying something? If they have enough intelligent people and people who are respected by society, so-called professors, then they can actually mitigate this in terms of a social way, like what you said. Policing is not good. Having somebody even as a buffer, well, they become the buffer then. That's why I said to many of my speeches, if we want to build Malaysia, we cannot just depend on the politician, and we cannot just blame the politician. We have to play our role. So if there is a situation like this, we don't let our politician answer. We answer. If we have a good answer, we should do that, because it's already been in the sense that if a politician answer, and then, as I said, they would group themselves into what for? Believe this guy, he's definitely going to say like that. So that means, as I said, the university need to come up and say something and mitigate this situation the best they can. So, well, hopefully the university doesn't become a problem lah. Where you have one professor saying the Chinese are to be blamed for all this thing. That one is something else lah. We don't want that. But as I said, there are so many hundreds of professors of Islam keeping quiet. That's number one. Number two, I think the religious teachers, okay, or should be able to give their opinion. They don't have to say that politician is wrong or this politician is right. All they need to do is to give an opinion, and the opinion should also not just be restricted to just their religious book, but also cover the idea of nation, of understanding one another. Similarly, also to the non-Muslim, I find their reaction is also problematic in the sense that they, on a lot of Islamic issues like the Anwar witnessing the Islamization of one of the Indian, before asking what is it, they would just attack and say, why are you doing this? And I had to explain and say, this is just witnessing. The guy already is a Muslim. This is just, I can witness anybody. This is part of a Muslim responsibility. And anyway, he was the one who asked, the boy who asked. So we're not waiting. So whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim, I find it's the same thing. Number one, we don't wait for response. Number two, we are totally disrespectful, both sides of the camp. Totally disrespectful, because I've heard, stupid minister lah. When is minister going to resign? Why do you talk like that? You may disagree with the man, but hey, show some decorum lah. Yang ini pun tak ada, and the editors also allowed these things to happen in their portal. And I'm also saying, where are we with this freedom of speech? It's getting overboard. We are degrading people, and this is not what is supposed to happen.
Right. This is a developing issue. Hopefully, it doesn't develop further into something that is not supposed to be, right? In terms of respect and understanding being the cornerstone of harmonious society, it actually boils down to the individual. Like how you act or how you react is very important. And again, mentioned this before. Professor has also highlighted. I believe. In situations like this is an opportunity for us to be more engaging, more understanding towards one another, and learn from the mistakes. Again, I want to thank my guests here, Professor Tajuddin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Co-host Hazrin Hassan, thank you for being here on Beyond the Headlines.
Always a pleasure.
Right. And to our audience back at home, if you like this particular episode, like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to also turn on the notification bell if you want updates of Beyond the Headlines, as well as NST Online's video reports. Follow us on other social media platforms, X, Facebook, and Instagram. My name is Amalina Kamal. Until next time, thank you.